Welcome to the Tech Arena Fireside Chat. I am so excited to be with Lisa Spelman, CEO of Cornelis Networks. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Allison. It is great to be here.
So, the Fireside Chat series is a little bit different than what we typically do on Tech Arena. We're going to spend some time with you, not deep diving into tech, but talking to you about your history and your leadership style. Shall we begin?
Yep, it sounds like fun.
I thought we'd just start off with the question that might lead us into incredibly different directions. What is a phrase that most defines you as a leader?
Okay. This is one that I've used a lot over the years, so any one of my team members will recognize it. But in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. This is a Theodore Roosevelt quote. And people who know me know that I'm about decisions and action and movement forward.
Would agree with that. Having worked with you, that really does it fits you to a T. Um, when you think about your career arc, you've spent your entire career in technology. What do you think alighted a desire to engage in technology from the start of your career?
It wasn't something that I grew up knowing I wanted to do. It kind of found me along the way. So I started my career in technology, but in finance. And I found that each step of my journey pulled me closer to product, to the actual building of something. So I kept making steps that got me, just inching closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. And the thing I love about pushing the boundaries of technology and innovation is that feeling. And I say this all the time, but what's impossible on Friday is possible by Monday. And that's like the magic of engineering and the magic of, thinking through these challenges and having brain space. And so, yeah, I would say it definitely found me along the way.
Now, you recently made a move in your own personal career to join Cornelis Networks as CEO. What drew you to Cornelis?
I will say that it was the opportunity to participate in the next optimization frontier. So many significant compute decisions have already been made in the industry that set the stage for the next decade of discovery. And I had a front row seat to that being on the compute front lines. But recognizing how much is still yet to be done to deliver like the right network architecture to really unleash all of that compute coming online is exciting. I also had a chance, honestly, to spend a lot of time with the founders, with the board, with the whole team. And I just got excited about this incredible technical capability that was ready to be utilized better, to be consumed, to be brought to market in a really significant way. And I had this feeling that the combination of my skill sets, my experience, what I've done in the industry, and the team that was in place, building this really cool technology was going to be a really powerful combination. So it just felt like the right place at the right time and the right opportunity. And I'm glad that, through the network, haha, I was reconnected with Cornelis and that this all worked out. We're having an awesome time.
Now, something that I know about you from having worked with you and observing your career over the last couple of decades is that you are a very intentional decision maker that makes informed risks. Tell me about a time that you've taken on a risk that has really propelled your career forward.
I have some examples of ones that were more in the, technology space that I can think of that were like really big moments. But the first one for me, I felt like really, personally was taking an overseas assignment. So I was, relatively young in my career. I was about 5 years in, and born and raised in the US, working for an American company, but a global, and had this, chance or opportunity to go see the world from a different lens, get out of that, American bubble, even like the West Coast tech bubble.
Hmm.
And it was truly, career and life altering for me. Not only do I have lifelong friends from that experience, but I had the chance to see what it's like to again, be so centered on the US and thinking of the country as a monolith, and then being in a geography where you need to translate things into 20 different languages to even have a chance to connect to an audience. And the world of, micro marketing, micro go to market, micro sales efforts, very specific into, unique countries, unique cultures, environments, and that learning for me was an explosive time. Like new brain cells were created.
Hmm.
And it really shaped a lot of leadership view and view on how I work with and engage with customers around the globe for the rest of my career.
I love what you said. I think that when you spend time in other cultures, it's like you're living a more dense experience in a way, and it really opens you up to a lot of learning. That was a job that you loved. Tell me about a job that you hated.
Okay, truly none of them. So I have disliked aspects of every job, I'm sure, but with every role, you are going to learn something. And even learning that you really don't like something or don't enjoy, a part of the job, it's still growth. So it helps point you in a better direction next time. So the thing that I, try to coach and advise people on is a couple things around this, though. What you can't do is sit there in a situation where you don't like the majority of what you're doing and stay. Like that's not smart. Like get out,
Hmm.
go do something different. If it's like I don't like 10% of this, well, you might suck it up because the rest of it's really cool. And I tell people that are starting out all the time, just pick something. You don't stress about it being absolutely right or that is this really my true calling? Is this my passion? It doesn't have to be because you don't really know what you like and what you don't like until you try a few things. So I'm just a big believer of that wheel in motion. Just get going, you'll find stuff and you'll figure it out. And then you have to hold yourself accountable to yourself that when things aren't working, you're going to move. And I think that again, those that have worked with me and around me and all that, they know that I like the creative process. Like I like thinking through ideas. I like teams brainstorming, coming together, challenging each other, and being part of that type of creation space. Maybe things like the absolute diligence to stay on top of every single spreadsheet and approve all expense reports and get all my expense reports in and all that, like that type of stuff is not like it's not what works for me, so that's fine. You just find your things that you like and don't like, and every role has a little bit of it, but keep moving. Every time you learn about what you do like, keep moving that direction.
Now, I know that you know this, but you are on a very exclusive list right now of uh, women that actually are CEOs of tech companies. Um, what's a challenge that you faced as a female executive in this arena, and how have you navigated that?
You know, I think leadership is hard regardless of gender. People are looking to you to see what the future is in an incredibly complex world with high rates of change. And I think that's kind of true of, everyone. I will say though, I do see and I do experience this kind of sense that I think women face at times that higher likability tax, I guess, for lack of a better, a better term for it. And it's true. There's studies around this that there's this expectation from actually not just men, but from women as well, that women leaders should be more likable. So there's this sense that they um, they want to have a better connection with a woman leader than maybe they require out of a male leader. And a lot of times that's not the worst thing, right? But it does mean that it's a drain at time on your resources. And you can feel it sometimes when you have to put a little bit more energy into that self-control and that concept of, how you show up. By the way, it's not just women, it's minorities as well. And, anyone that kind of fits outside that standard model of expectations of like what is a leader tends to pay some of these. So I think it's something to, pay attention to. You don't want to be, bending yourself over backwards to fit into a mold because the other thing I tell people all the time is as you move into higher levels of leadership positions, you just have to give up on this hope that everyone's going to like you. They aren't.
Hmm.
It's fine. That's also not a gender thing. That's a leadership thing. Like, that is not your job. It's not your job to be nice. It's not your job to be liked by everyone. It is your job to be, professional, to lead, to drive forward, to drive growth, to make good decisions, to be accountable, to be responsible for your employees, to your shareholders, to your investors, to your customers, all of that. But you just have to kind of let go of that sense we grow up with, even as kids, of wanting to be liked.
That's a really good point. Um, I think about that from a standpoint of having to deliver some hard news, which you have to do in the CEO
Yeah.
seat. I've seen executives fail at that moment of wanting to be liked more than wanting to be clear, and clear is
Yeah.
kind. Um, Tell us the moment one of the moments that you're most proud of in your career.
This is a hard one because there's so many cool things. And again, when you say my moment, it's like everything you do in these complex spaces is with a team and a group. But a couple of one for sure is, and this also goes to a risk taking one, was a decision that a smaller group of us made in my last company when I was at Intel, and that decision to start adding in AI acceleration into the Xeon processor family. And I was very, proud of that. It was risky at the time. You were taking die area, you were consuming space, and there was an uncertain market around it, and the software work hadn't been done, and you didn't know if customers were going to adopt it. And it turned out to be one of, the best decisions that we could have possibly made for the product line. And that was, a hard one to push through. There was a lot of naysayers and a lot of opportunities we could have turned around at any point. And so that's one. There's other ones, things that you and I have worked on together, even in our history or our past, where we had the opportunity to set definitions for the industry, meaning we positioned how the market was going to look at this next wave of compute and capability. And I'll always remember walking around that Mobile World Congress with you and seeing stuff we had created in partner after customer after even competitor booths and on the floor with what we had built. Like, that's a cool moment. That's the neat thing about technology is you play in this space and you get to scale. And then the other one is the last one is just what I'm doing now. I spent the most of my life leading inside of a large company, and it maybe seemed risky to people, or, oh geez, I wonder what she's doing going in leading at a smaller company and taking on this role. But I am so excited for what we're about to, unleash on the world. The technology is awesome. The team is great. I'm proud of myself for making a leap and not just, jumping into another large company role. And really, I'm here testing myself every single day. Like, when you're CEO, everything lands on your plate.
Hmm.
Everything. So, like, the way you can spend your day is wild. It's like context switching on, on an accelerated, the biggest pace you can think of. But I'm loving it. I feel personally unleashed in this role and having the chance to be a part of growing this company and really building something new. So I know all the results aren't in yet, but I'm already, proud of it and excited about it.
One of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking is the concept of high capacity, which is something that you introduced me to in our work together of, are folks able to handle the capacity and context switching? And I have great confidence that you're going to be able to navigate that, Lisa. How do you approach being in a company culture that is so focused on innovation, like Cornelis is, but also wants to encourage inclusion? How do you manage that with your leadership team and really set the tone as the CEO?
Yeah. I like to focus on creating a lot of space for ideas. I like to move fast. I already mentioned that. So I do have to remind myself to slow down. Like, I have to have my own triggers, my own little, reminders to do this to get more ideas on the table. So it's like I know that I want them. I just also like to be part of the action of the brainstorming of the thinking. So I can kind of get overly wrapped up in that and rolled up. So I have to remind myself that if you want all the ideas, you have to create space for those ideas. And it's a lot easier to consider a wide diversity of options and perspectives if you do create an environment where they can come to light. It's a lot harder if you don't, because then you're just relying on, yourself and your own inherent knowledge, which is good, but it only gets you so far. So I also want to say within this though, people have to remember that they also need to bring thought behind their ideas. Like you can't just show up in a fast-paced, high-performance team and sit down with a bunch of people and display a bunch of step one thinking. And I call it step
Sure.
one thinking, meaning I just thought of the very next thing. Team members need to hold themselves accountable to be thinking through step two. So I just call it step one, step two thinking, but step two could really mean step 2 through 10 of like, what happens next? Okay, well, then what happens next? Like, if we take this action, what then? What then? So you want your leadership team to be fully committed to creating space for ideas, for that inclusion of experiences, different thoughts, different worldviews. At the same time, you want to be part of a team and a workforce, and you want to hold yourself accountable to bringing in good ideas, not just always the first thing that comes to mind or things that have been, looked at, tread over before, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a two-way street. It's not just a leadership thing. It's also, a team member thing about mutual respect for those ideas and, the time and effort it takes to, clear the table and make room for them.
Now you're working in a space, network capability for the largest of compute clusters.
Yeah.
It's a really challenged environment right now in terms of what hyperscalers and other large scale compute players are wanting to do with these systems. What tech trends are going to come in that are going to influence the future of that landscape?
Yeah, it's actually a really exciting time. And like I talked about, I had view on all these compute decisions, and now I'm on the next great optimization frontier. And the reason I say that is people don't even really always understand this or know this, because there's so much conversation about, oh, GPUs and supply and how soon can I get the next one. But in a good sized GPU cluster, just using training as an example, your data can be spending like 40 to 60% of its time in the network. And so that's why I call it the next great optimization frontier, because if you
Hmm.
can take that down by 5%, that means your GPUs are not sitting there waiting any
Hmm.
longer, or you've shrunk the amount of time that they're idle, and then you take down another 5, and then you take it down another 5. So the efficiency you can build into the network is the um, most untapped way to improve AI training cluster performance. Now, of course, there'll be additional amazing silicon that'll come out and will also improve the performance, but it'll still run into the same challenge of not having the access. So you sit there and say, when I'm really my compute's really busy, it does a great job, but it spends way too much time idle, and that's what we're trying to solve. But within that, there's a lot of just amazing stuff happening in the ecosystem, in the startup world, all over the place around, what are some of those physical layer opportunities? So, Cornelis, we're working at the logic layer. We're doing, the adapters, the NICs, so we're doing the switches, kind of the end-to-end network. But there's a lot of opportunity in the physical layer around how does photonics come in here and change some of the math about how you deliver these features and capabilities. How does optics continue to evolve and change as well? And there's a lot of companies that are doing some pretty unique stuff here, and they have kind of similar thesis behind them, but they're making different choices on the specific underlying technologies that they're investing in. And I think it's an exciting race, and it's exciting for me, again, in that CEO role, the leadership role, future of the company, to sit here and think about not just how do I build my own products, how do I work with the team to get those out the door and meet the customer need, but how do I think about where next is our partnership opportunity in the industry to take our capabilities and crank them up a level. It's an area where I think my experience inside of large company and also now small company really helps, like those dueling perspectives, because I've spent my life working inside of an ecosystem, not just being, the one team or the one person that has to solve it all. So my mind naturally goes to, how do I find partnerships with these types of other startups, other companies, other players in the industry, and how do we get to a point where for customers we're delivering, these co-validated solutions, we're bringing to market opportunities where we have the chance to do something unique, maybe custom for them. So it's very exciting, but I think some of those, again, specifically I'm talking in the network space, those emerging technologies in the physical layer represent a lot of, unique opportunity for us to really accelerate our roadmap and the TAM that we're able to address.
It's interesting. We've called this area of technology innovation one of the hot topics for 2025 on Tech Arena. We're going to be following it. I can't wait to see what the industry does because you're right. If you can't unleash the GPUs to do what they need to do, you're basically investing in infrastructure that's sitting idle.
Yep.
Um, when you choose to lead, you choose to accept that at some point you're going to fail. You're choosing risk in your life. So one question that I have for you is, how have you faced adversity and the chance of failure, both from a standpoint of your personal life and the standpoint of your professional life?
You're right, because if you aren't failing at some things, that probably means you aren't actually being risk averse enough. It means you're maybe not pushing yourself to try harder. Not everything should be easy and go right the first time. But I'll tell you, I do think this gets easier as you get older. Not the disappointment exactly, but the ability to reflect on a disappointment, to think through deeply what was in your control, what wasn't. Like, it is true. Sometimes life just happens to you. That happens personally, that happens professionally. It happens. But then there's the stuff that was in your control, and you want to be honest with yourself about what that was. And then you hit this point in life, and I feel like I'm there, that you know that beyond each disappointment is your next opportunity or your next door that opens. And you know that because you've experienced, like, you had a time where you didn't get the job you wanted and you were so upset or disappointed, but then you didn't. So you weren't committed to a new job. And then this new opportunity came and it was even better than what that one would have been. And so once you have enough of those proof points like that, you start to realize that, again, the cliche or the statement about every, closed door leads to another one. It's true. It's very real. And then the thing I also, I will say to people or remind them of is, you have a lot of power in creating that next open door.
Hmm.
And so there's how you handle the disappointment, and then do you wait for the next thing to happen to you, or does what you just learned from that help set you on that way? I had a discussion that I've had to have with some investors, and I had a particular investor, and I just thought that didn't go as well as I wanted it to. And I said, I think I wasn't clear about our value and the story and all of that. And I thought, you know what, I can just let this person pass, and say, oh, we'll catch you on the next round or whatever, or not. And so, I spent some time over the weekend, this a couple weeks ago, writing out, like, just much more clearly articulating my thoughts. Again, I was really pretty new in the role, still learning a lot. And I just said, you know what, go for it. Like, what, you're already disappointed. So what happens if they turn you down again?
Hmm.
Nothing. And so I spent some time, really thought through it and said, hey, here's the point I think that we didn't get covered, that got missed, that isn't really, you didn't really get to see all of this value that's being delivered here. Here's some other data points behind it. Sent that off, and then that was, on a Sunday, and got a call on Monday that was like, all right, let's keep talking. You're right, let's go. And so you got to show that fight, and you got to push to open that next door beyond. I can't sit there and bemoan that, hey, it was only like my second or third week on the job. Maybe I wasn't fully ready for that conversation. That's okay. Didn't go great. You just go back and you fix it and you just push through. So again, take what was within your control and what wasn't, and then adapt and adjust. So I'm just using it as a small example of something, recent personally that I've dealt with, but it happens all day, every day. So you get good at it.
Okay, now for something fun. I know that you've traveled the globe for business. Where would be the one place that you would never um, say no to go back to?
To go back to. Well, I probably won't surprise you this one, but I think I would just say Paris. I just love it. Now, I am so lucky to have had the opportunity to travel the globe through my work. Like I said, I got to live overseas. I got to, go all over the place. I have had the chance to meet and make so many friends around the world, and it is, I mean, it's a blessing to be able to consider yourself a citizen of the world. So the question of the list of where I wouldn't go is probably a lot smaller, but I do love Paris. I remember when I was living in Munich and an important customer wanted to have a meeting on a Friday in Paris, and all my colleagues were like, "Oh, I don't want to travel on a Friday. Like, who wants to do this?" And I'm sitting there with my hand up to the sky, saying, "Pick me, pick me." And I just kind of laughed that again, when you live in Europe and you have the opportunity for business travel, it's to places like Paris for the weekend. And
Yeah, twist my arm, right? Yeah.
I couldn't have volunteered faster.
Well, I would have to say that that's on the top five for me too. So maybe we can get a trip there sometime. Um, Going back to female leadership, I know you didn't really want to talk about this before, but I do want to ask you, what has been the response of your female staff to all of a sudden having a female CEO at the company?
I will see over time. I will say one kind of data thing. I we have seen an uptick in applications coming in, so candidates coming in
Mm-hmm.
uh, that are women. And I think that is just one of those examples of human nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, human nature is this thought that, when you see more people like you're more inclined to, you think or you believe you'll be more inclined to feel comfortable within that type of, environment. So that's, some example of what we're seeing. But again, my goal as a leader is not just to connect with like one portion of the population of the team. It's to connect with the whole team. And then I really want to focus on bringing everyone together. So, building this sense of community, this
Mm-hmm.
sense of commonality, this sense of a shared mission. And so, really, yeah, helping drive that. So, I don't know if that we have a change in culture just because I happen to be a woman. I will say we are focused on culture and getting everyone aligned to focus, simplification, customer orientation, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, do the most
Now,
important things in the simplest way possible that the customers want to buy. Like that's it.
Now, I know I want to talk to you a little bit about development of leaders because I know that you've led a lot of leadership teams. You work with leaders to develop their craft. You work with leaders to lean into maybe their flat spots to improve what they bring to the table. How do you do that? And where do you see leaders failing in terms of challenging high performing individuals to push forward?
I think that more leaders would probably benefit from spending time thinking about how they want to lead and then implementing systems to help themselves. We all have a tendency or can get too focused on what we have to do. But as a leader, your job is to scale the company or scale the resources, whatever it is, to get more out of everyone and to be in service to your team. And you can't do that if you're focused on your to-do list, of the day every day. Of course, I have a to-do list. I love my list. So it's not that you can ignore all of that, but I think I've seen so many times it happens where people reach into leadership positions, and then they mistake that where their value really comes from. And again, I think that value can be very different within certain roles. So, like when I look at what I'm doing right now, yes, of course, we need to make some really great technical decisions, and we need to approach, all of our, customers, and we need to get the work done, and we have to make sure we have good policies, and we have to, all sorts of stuff. But as the role for me right now, I see it as it's my job to spend about 50% of my time outside of the company. So
Hmm.
whether that's with customers, investors, recruiting, suppliers, potential partners, peers, whatever. It is my job to stay on the pulse of the industry and to use that knowledge to expand the worldview of the team. And through that expansion is where, again, you push and drive your high performers into higher levels of performers. The other thing I think leaders at all levels make mistakes on is not addressing performance challenges. And I mean, I know people know this, but A players like to be surrounded by A players. And, um, if you aren't addressing an area that's falling behind, then people notice that and it sucks joy out of the work. And I think that, it's just the reality that you have to have these kind of hard mental conversations around is each function is every person and leader that I'm investing in living into the culture, living into the values and driving the work. Are they driving us forward? And if you set those goals clearly, it's pretty easy to judge, honestly.
Okay, one final question for you before we sign off. At the end of your career, how do you want to be measured in terms of your impact? And how do you want to see, how do you want those who you lead and collaborate with to view your accomplishments?
Okay. I don't think my answer will particularly uniquely surprise you, but I will say, I want people to say, man, we had a lot of fun while we did hard, cool stuff. I like to have fun. You know that. Like, work can be so high stakes, high pressure. It can have a lot of intensity to it, but I've always, prided myself and taken it as part of my role to make it fun. Make this a place you want to spend time, where you want to spend your brain power, where you want to put your energy towards. And so I think that's what I want people to remember. We had fun while we did some really hard, cool stuff.
That's awesome. I think that you're well on your way with that one. So good job. Lisa, one final question. Where can folks continue to engage with you and learn more about Cornelis Networks?
Yeah, no, well, we're really getting out there. We're bringing our next products to market, so you'll see us at supercomputing. You'll see us at a bunch of other industry shows. You'll see us much bigger on, again, all the social networks as we're bringing out. We're revamping a bunch of our, customer-facing material, all of that on our own website. Yeah, so you'll see me everywhere, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with the whole audience. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much for being here.